If the sparks fall down on that fresh hay.
Oh, yep, it's a major loss and disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, and then just all that downtime for that farmer.
Bart, just before the market break, you were mentioning that it's really important for insurance agents that are working with farmers to get out to that farm once in a while, because many times a different set of eyes picks up something that maybe the farmer's become accustomed to, and he just doesn't notice that it could be a potential hazard of some sort.
Well, definitely, and there has been times where we come up, and I know that we all like to do our own work sometimes, and we'll see someone's built a pair of stairs up to a loft, and they don't put on a handrail. Well, and every once in a while, no matter how much we try, our hands are going to be full, and then we could step off, and that could obviously. You don't want a farmer or anybody to fall 10, 15 feet.
That would be even worse if maybe someone else was there and then they got hurt. Now you've got, the liability issues on top of it.
Oh my gosh, it happens so much. I remember one of the worst things that we heard about once in a while, no matter how much we try, our hands are going to be full, and then we could step off, and that could obviously. You don't want a farmer or anybody to fall 10, 15 feet.
That would be even worse if maybe someone else was there and then they got hurt. Now you've got, the liability issues on top of it.
Oh my gosh, it happens so much. I remember one of the worst things that we heard about was up north. It happened a couple of years ago. This young lady had just won a beauty pageant the summer before, and she was helping her dad out, and he didn't have the PTO shield on, and her long blonde hair got swooped right into it, and that was, those unfortunate things do happen, and I know the PTO shields are a pain, and but they're very important to protect us. We were looking at a dryer, and someone had changed the belts and left the shield off the belt right there, and well, people's sleeves from their shirts get caught into them sometimes when they're.
Or you could be just walking by and kind of stumble a little bit and.
Well, that's very true. I mean, that's why they're accidents.
And the other thing is, too, if you mentioned the potential fire, well, anything any of your policyholders can do to keep losses down helps everybody's insurance premiums, right? We're all kind of in this together, and that's a basis of insurance.
And that's a wonderful thing to bring out, because we're all part of that pool. And every time we all do those little things to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, we're also protecting the others too, because again, we're all pulling our monies together to protect ourselves. I mean, just a hailstorm that comes through and knocks down a building, I mean, that's a couple $100,000 just right there on that one building, and you may spend $3,000, $5,000, $6,000 on your insurance policy. So again, that pool of money from each of us helps support each other.
We've really caught on, though, to the liability exposure that most farmers have. And most farmers are pretty well covered. I mean, like even my homeowners here in Faribault has liability, but then I have a blanket on top of that, and then I have a blanket with you out at the farm, and it's very reasonably priced.
Well, and as you talk about the blanket, we sometimes will call those umbrella policies, and they're excess liability. And unfortunately, a lot of farmers don't have them. When I go out and I talk to a new prospect, a lot of times I find that they don't have that excess liability, and a lot of times the farmers will tell me, well, I don't really have anything. And unfortunately, when it comes down to if there is a liability for something, and they go out there and look at your land and they look at your building and they start putting on, well, let's say an acre was selling for $8,000 or $10,000. Well, you've got a couple hundred acres at $8,000 or $10,000. Well, it adds up very quickly. And then the cost of the buildings and the cost of the implements. You may not have a lot of cash on hand, but you have a lot of
assets.
And those are the things that they'll look at when they say, okay, well, this is your judgment. So having an excess liability policy, which is an umbrella policy, just for a couple $100 a year, go there to make sure that you won't be hurt by a liability claim, whether it's on the farm or maybe in one of your trucks or even in your personal car.
And the other thing that comes with that is, if God forbid something does happen, all at once now the insurance company, they have some exposure, so they're used to dealing with this, so they have lawyers that specialize in this, so then you're going to have a defense too then, aren't you?
That's correct. We have actually once it happens, we just take over for you. We come in, we make it as little of a problem for you, and we just make sure that we take care of you, we defend you, and we make sure that the outcome is the best that can be for you. And also try to make sure that your neighbors are happy. It could be a chemical overspray. You know, these are just things that we're here to do, but we want to make sure that we're going to be taking care of you. We'll make sure that your neighbors are reasonably happy as well in case of a claim that involves that too.
Here, about 3 weeks ago, I drove with Laura to Ann Arbor, Michigan for a neurology appointment. And we were coming home, and she decided cell phones are marvelous. She was hungry for Chipotle. And so she searched on her little cell phone, and we took the exit at Madison, and all at once we ended up going by all of these American Family Agent buildings. That's where the home office is, right, in Madison?
That's correct. We have a wonderful support system there. So whether it's at 8 o'clock in the morning and my office isn't open yet, or if it's at 8 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock in the morning, we have those supports in place at Madison, or also up in Milwaukee. We also have them over in Colorado, to make sure that when someone calls, that there's going to be someone to take care of them.
So even in the middle of the night, if you have some disaster that happens, somebody will answer the phone.
Someone will not answer the phone, but get things started for you. There are many times where we've had a house fire and we need to get someone in a hotel. We'll get them right there.
Wow. Tell us more about American Family. How did it get started? It has multiple lines. I guess I've never asked you all these years I've known you.
Oh, sure. Well, actually, Herman, the person that actually created American Family back 85, almost 86 years ago, was because he was seeing that when he was selling insurance for another company, that the farmers, even though they put most of their vehicles up for the winter, still paid the same rate as someone that was living in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And he didn't think that was fair because there was less exposure for the farmers.
My truck isn't probably going to get damaged too much if it's sitting in the shed all winter long.
Exactly.
Versus being on the road.
So that's when he started American Family, was to cater to the farmers. And right now in the state of Minnesota, we're the second largest insurer of farms. So we've done a really good job.
Oh, and you really, I almost said it's a niche market, but there's a lot of us out there, but a lot of companies, you have to know agriculture, you have to know farms and unique exposures that we have.
Oh, definitely. I remember one of my farmers, they also have a lot of horses, so they went through this other insurance company that advertised through the Quarter Horse Association, and she called me and she goes, they only allow 2 horses. And I was like, what? She goes, yeah, they will only allow me to have 2 horses on their farm policy. But yet they were advertising the Quarter Horse Association, and I was like, oh, well, we don't have that problem. We're more than happy to take care of it. And we've added a lot of new endorsements for a lot of farmers that need them, where it be carrying custody and control, especially for hogs. It's been a real big issue with people having to have someone else's hogs in their buildings. We have the right coverages to protect them. We also have the suffocation, and then we also have the pollution coverages. That one's becoming really big, and a lot of insurance companies don't have the right coverages yet. We do have the right endorsements now for our farm customers.
So they've been able to evolve as agriculture has changed.
Correct, and it's not only just agriculture, but then state law. You know, we're here to make sure that we're protecting our farmers, so that our farmers can continue to do the things that they're here to do, and that's to feed us.
One issue that really came up last summer was off-target movement of dicamba. Wasn't super big here as it was, but that's a whole other issue that's come up when we're spraying herbicides. And I guess I never did ask how, if my liability insurance covers that, or if it really gets dicey.
Well, and you will usually have an internal limit, and it depends on what you need for the spraying. We just had one this past year, and ended up being about $8,100 that we spent out. It was for, I think we ended up paying an acre. It was probably only about a quarter to half an acre, but just for goodwill, we went ahead and paid for the full acre. Luckily, it wasn't a
huge loss of wiping out a whole field or something. But
correct.
The other thing that I've wondered about is later on in the summer, our bins are all empty. They're all insured, and grain dryers insured, and the legs and the augers and all that. But then all at once later on in fall, all those grain bins are full. Unless you have a separate rider, the grain in the bin isn't typically covered on your farm insurance policy, is it?
Well, and different companies have it set up different ways. Some will have a seasonal amount, and with corn prices and things, a lot of folks are holding as well, and that doesn't work out as well. It ends up being a lot more expensive. We actually have an endorsement that actually, when we add the grain, we can add it for the entire year. So instead of you having to pick and choose when that grain is covered, we're just going to cover it for the full year, and then that way there's no worries whether or not you're going to hold that year or you're going to sell. Not to mention that we really we don't know when a fire is going to happen. It could be when the grain bin is full. It could be when the grain bin is empty.
Or a tornado. It was a number of years ago I read where the farmer had a bin full of corn, and the tornado came and took the entire bin, and every kernel of corn was gone, scattered to the wind.
A friend of mine in Albert Lee had that happen to him. Quite a few. A tornado came through, took out quite a few farms. I remember all the articles that he was sending up of how many people were so excited about how fast we got out there, how quick we took care of them. There's a lot of beautiful buildings set up in Albert Lee because of those tornadoes that came through.
And it is pretty common too, isn't it, that sometimes you don't replace a building for what it's worth, but you have the replacement cost. You know, a building that's 15, 20 years old costs a lot more to replace it than what you actually paid to build that building 15, 20 years ago.
Well, and with all the different buildings, they all depreciate at different
rates. Yeah.
Rates. I mean, if you have a hog building, or a chicken, or a turkey, I mean, obviously those are going to start deteriorating a lot faster than a machine shed. And those are the things that your insurance agent will talk to you about, like myself, when I come out and look at, well, that machine shed, yeah, let's definitely keep full replacement cost on it, but the hog barn, well, we have to make sure that we know that the life of that building won't be as long as another, because we'll have to make those updates. And of course, as we make those updates, well, then the insurance agent needs to know so that they can update the files to make sure that you get the right coverages.
Yeah. Because mistakes can be costly.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that's why generators becoming so important. The alarm systems on the generators, or when the power goes out, it's so important for us now to run out there to make sure that our hogs are okay, or the turkeys are okay, that they're not going to suffocate.
One of my complaints where I grew up is we're in the middle of nowhere, and it was about 10 miles to the closest fire department. So our rates were always a little bit higher than if I think the cutoff was 6 or 7 miles from a fire department. But there again, the insurance companies, they look at all the data, and that's what they do, is they assign risks, and that relates to the premium.
That's so correct. And a lot of times too, that's why we look at how close the buildings are to each other. And if the buildings are right on top of each other, that's a little bit of a rating factor as well.
Yeah, because if one catches fire, it can very easily spread to the next one, versus if it was a few hundred feet away.
Exactly. And one of the things that we've been looking at now too is with the systems inside the hog barns. You know, we're looking for the four hooks instead of just the 3. We're looking for how are people holding their lights? We started seeing a lot of incandescent light bulbs. People aren't putting their shields back over their light bulbs, and of course that light bulb
could get hot,
blow up, and then if that ember gets down and hits, there's so many things. And that's one thing I love about our loss control. We're here just to help the farmer. And as I go out to different farms, and when there's a farm like a large farm, I always like to bring him with me. And then I can start learning more of what he's looking for, because he goes out to the claims too, and he helps find out why a claim started to help that farmer understand. And then also for us as agents, as we learn, then we can start seeing, well, let's say if I come up to Jerry's farm and say, Jerry, that right there, why don't we change that? Or would you be interested in looking at a different way to keep you from possibly having a claim?
Or even sometimes maybe you aren't thinking about it. This is where maybe an insurance agent's mind works differently than us ordinary people. I gotcha. But remember my John Deere 820? Mm-hmm. The classic tractor. Well, I had it on the insurance policy, and all at once you realized it wasn't out at the farm, but it was being hauled around on a trailer driving to different parades and different events, and my premiums went up just a little bit. Never dawned on me that it's different between just sitting in the shed out at the farm and being out and about doing things.
Well, and
it never dawned on me that you should know that.
Well, and it was just you and I having that conversation one day, or maybe I was hearing you talk to someone about it, and then that's when I went and came up to you afterwards. And yeah, it's now you have almost like a car policy following your tractor, instead of it being something that's just
within a mile of home base.
Yeah.
Now
and now it's in a nice, beautiful Lester building right next to my camper.
Gyms. But the reason that you would want to know that is because if all at once there was a car accident, it rolled off the trailer and got destroyed, well, then maybe the insurance company could say, well, you told us this is where it was and this was a different type of risk and you didn't tell us. So it was good that you picked up on it, so I know that it's covered. You see what I mean?
And I'm glad that we did figure that out. And that's one of the things too we see a lot with combines and other implement. A lot of times a farmer now will rent someone else's buildings to put their larger tractors in, so that their home isn't as cluttered with so many equipment. And if the combine, for example, is in someone else's building, and let's say,
oh, you should know that. Your policy should know that.
Well, especially because if the building collapses, well, that's not a covered claim on your other home policy. So if we know exactly where it's at, then we'll be able to make sure it's covered, so if it does get damaged.
It did occur to me that Monday, about a month or so ago, remember when we had that foot or foot and a half of wet, heavy snow? I wondered if I was going to hear about any livestock building roofs or machine shed roofs that collapsed. I didn't hear any, but is that typically covered on your farm insurance policy due to heavy snow if your roof collapses?
Well, we always offer it, but not every farmer will take it.
Oh, so it's kind of a rider than an endorsement or something you can put on.
That is correct. So yeah, the weight of ice, sleet, and snow is something that if you don't have it on your policy, you should really take a look at. Even on the bends, I know bends typically don't, but it does happen. And when we had, well, in certain areas, 17 inches of that wet snow, and it's sitting there freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing, it just gets worse and worse on that building. And especially if one of your trusses, maybe you accidentally hit it with a hay bale and you knock that one truss out, well, that can almost take out 30% of the load bearing of that building, just because of that one truss.
Or maybe your roof was leaking, you didn't know it, and one truss that's getting wet.
That's true.
Goofy things happen in our world, don't they?
They do. They definitely do. Oh, and by the way, do you want to talk a little bit about
yes, before you have to leave it a little early, because here's another example. One of Bart's customers is more important than Jerry. He has to leave the program a little early today, but you and I are both involved in the Faribault Chamber of Commerce Agribusiness Committee, and we have our big breakfast coming up here later on this month.
And I can't wait. It'll be our first breakfast, and we have some wonderful people coming and talking. It's going to be a great event. There's only 200 tickets, and we're over halfway sold out so far. So if you're someone that's looking to get a ticket, go ahead and give the chamber a call, or head over to the co-op and talk to Kelly. They're only $15, but the food is local. We're getting so much food brought in, and it's going to be wonderful to be able to have locally grown food brought to our table.
And speakers, Dr. Bev Durgan, Dean of the University of Minnesota Extension, is going to be down, and it's going to be a great program. It's going to be at the KC Hall here in Faribault, right?
That's correct. It starts at 7 in the morning, or 7:30, I'm sorry, in the morning. So we hope to see a lot of folks out there, but again, try to remember, if you can, to go ahead and buy the tickets early, because we only seat up to 200.
And when the tickets are spoken for, that's it.
That's it.
You better get going. You now have 4.5 minutes to get to your appointment at 10 o'clock.
Well, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. And Jerry, thanks again for inviting me down.
And the key is visit with your insurance agent. Kind of give everything the look-see once over before we get busy in the field.
Yep, and if you ever want a second opinion, I'm always happy to take a look at it.
Thanks, Bart.
Thank you.